Welcome to Protect You Radio. Getting a little bit of a late jump today, but it is what it is. Busy people here amongst the show. And we actually lost Candy tonight. We lost Marian last week and Candy tonight. So I've got the diva of defense, Marian, back with me this week from Well-Armed Woman. And we're going to have a little fun tonight. So you had an issue with puppies last week, right? Or a dog?
Yeah, one of my dogs ran away, but we found her.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, outside of my kids and my wife, my dogs are probably right up there with, I like my guns, but my dogs,
yeah, we got her back.
Good.
Somebody posted it on the Portage County Rescue, and a friend of mine at work saw it, and so we eventually connected with these people, and we picked her up.
Tell you what, technology is a wonderful thing. Think about back in the day. If you had to go find your dog, it was people still do it, stapling stuff to telephone poles.
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
Now we got electronic telephone poles. That's a beautiful thing. Outstanding. So anything fun gun related since we talked to you last?
Let's see. Last week we had our Well-Armed Woman monthly meeting for February, and we had a speaker, Alex Lancy, came in. And we had a full house. We ran out of chairs, so that's a good thing.
Outstanding.
We've had 5 or 6 people join in the last week, so that's a good thing, too.
So you think between the speaker and the gun show, maybe? Was that...
maybe, yeah.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
The speaker was pretty interesting. I looked up his bio when you guys told me who it was.
Yes.
And pretty neat background. Written at least 2 books, right? Maybe 3 now?
He's written 3. He's going to start to work on another one. Yeah.
And sounds like most of them have to do with a kind of a warrior spirit, a warrior mentality.
Yes.
And how you work that into your everyday life.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. We might have to dig. He's local, right? He's here in Akron. Is that?
Yeah, he's in Akron.
So we might have to drag him on one day.
Maybe we could do that.
see if he doesn't charge a fee because he's a world-renowned speaker and stuff. Because our budget here is let's see, I got 2 cough drops and a dry erase marker. I think he'll come in. So who knows? I
took a class Saturday that was very interesting. It was like tactical first aid, trauma first aid.
Who'd you take that with?
It was with his name was Carmen. He's from TDI.
Oh, nice.
It was at through Buckeye Firearms.
Oh, they do some cool stuff.
Yeah, and it was really a good class.
Did you have to go down to
No,
TDI?
it was actually at Candy's church.
Oh, really?
They held it, yeah.
Hey, if Candy's listening, thanks for telling me, Candy. Just FYI. Hope you're on your way in. If you're not, we're going to talk. Didn't even invite me. That's hurtful.
It was a good class.
Yeah, so they talked about just overall self-defense and...
Not self-defense.
Just the first aid side.
Well, a little of the self-defense, to get rid of the threat before you can treat sometimes.
And most people don't realize that. That's kind of the step you actually have to take is neutralize that threat before because if you're trying to treat somebody and there's still a threat...
Right.
Now you're down, and now somebody else has got to treat 2 people. It's that was a little bit an eye opener for me many moons back. I said, "Oh, it was such common sense, but not for John.
Yeah,
nothing is ever that much common sense." So, would you guys cover mostly gunshot wounds or
gunshot wounds? Yeah, knife wounds.
How long of a class was it?
6 hours.
Wow,
it was really interesting.
Holy cow!
It was a cool class.
Did you guys have to drag people too?
No,
I've seen some of those classes where you're going to drag the.
But they had like pans of some type of a meat. And we had to, put our they cut it, and we had to put our finger in there and keep stuffing the gauze in there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
that beats the snot out of Stop the Bleed. We got that little plastic leg. So they gave raw cuts of meat. You went in after it, huh?
Yeah.
Did you have to suture too, or just
no
stuff it,
suturing?
Huh? I've
just
seen some suturing classes like that too.
Yeah.
We do the opposite. In my knife class, I'll put a piece of, and this isn't by my idea. It comes from. Marshall Blade Concepts. We'll put a piece of meat on a dowel rod and let people cut it, see how well their knife does with it.
Right.
And people are like, "Oh, that's different." And doing that with the meat, it's a different than just okay. We're going to do this drill now. Here's the cuts, and you start cutting into something that's real meat that simulates a human, or stuffing what simulates a real human. It's a little bit different. I think that would probably go a long way if you're a little queasy. If you do it a bunch of time on meat.
Well, some of the pictures, they warned us before
we
watched them. Yeah, they were a little gory.
So the meat, you did the meat after you watched the pictures?
Yeah.
Wow, so that's kind of intense.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, look, this is that picture, and I'm now stuffing my fingers into an open wound. Yeah. That is so cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool. And the guy was from TDI.
Cameron, I can't remember his last name. Wow. Really good teacher.
Huh.
Yeah.
You guys are always on top of stuff. I love it. I love it. Always doing extra training. Good stuff. Any idea if they're going to do future training like that? Are you guys going to do something like that with Well-Armed Woman?
We might do. I want to get. There's a guy, I can't remember his name either, but he does the Stop the Bleed class. So I want to get him in.
I think Stop the Bleed is going to be boring after that class. Stop the Bleed is going to be like, that's boring.
Probably, but I want to get it in for the girls.
Good for you. That's that's a great class for probably the Well-Armed Woman. And when's your next meeting?
First Tuesday of the month. So
whatever that date is.
Yeah.
Huh? So it is every month, first Tuesday.
Yes.
That's so cool. I love it.
Yeah. There are sometimes we have to change it, but pretty much it's first Tuesday.
I just think it's so neat that you guys continue to do topics like that every month. That's because that's not easy to come up with a speaker or some topic every month.
Yeah.
I just look at us every week here. We're scrambling, and these guys put up with me. They're like, "John, do we have a topic for this week?" And it's midnight on Sunday, and John's going, "Oh, I guess we should do that, huh?" So I'm texting them stuff, and they're probably turning their phones off around 8. We're like, "Leave us alone. Why don't you do this on like Thursday?" So yeah, we always.
It is difficult coming up with something, especially. I mean, we don't really have much of a budget either because we're 501(c), so we're lucky to have enough money to pay for our insurance.
I have 2 cough drops I can lend you and a dry erase pen that you can maybe swap with some of your future speakers. Do most of the speakers do it for free, though, for you?
Most of them do.
That's good. And who's charging to come to a group like that? That's kooky.
Yeah, well, going to do like a self-defense class, I think March 7th.
For you guys or for just
He's got.
It's just open?
Yeah, open is be 30 people.
Oh, wow.
He's gonna ask the Stark County chapter too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Is it gun focus or is it just self-defense?
More self-defense with tools you have on you.
Oh, improvised weapons.
Yeah.
I love teaching. I teach that class and I love doing it. It's a hoot, man. We have a good time. I teach it most of the time for women in the outdoors, but if I'm teaching any type of self-defense class, that's one of the things we focus on is, you don't necessarily need your gun. And if you can't get to your gun first, if I drive this pen in my hand down into your ear canal, that might be the first step.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I might take one of these cough drops and shove it in your nose, and then we'll go from there. So, whatever you have, if your mind's willing, your body will do what it wants, and and anything can be a weapon. That's the beauty of it. My son was messing with me in the kitchen one day, and he goes, "Dad, can you really turn anything into a weapon?" I said, "Well, I think. Why?" He goes, "What about this banana?" I had no idea, so I just started beating him with a banana. And he's like, "Dad, stop! You're right. You can do it." So we had a good time. Who knew that a banana? But it works. That little, not the part that you actually grab and pull open, but that end is hard.
Right.
And I started whacking him with that, and he was baffled that you could beat somebody up with a banana. So anything will work.
Yeah.
You just have to be willing. It's a mindset versus a weapon.
That's right.
We have fun. So last week we started talking about the conditions to prove self-defense in Ohio. And pretty good conversation back and forth with Candy and I, and we covered a lot of ground. But the main thing is, there are the 3 points, and we'll quick review and highlight. The defendant can't be at fault. So if you're in a fight and you go to use lethal force, you cannot have started the fight, right? Of course, sounds commonsensical, but most people think that they end up in a fight and then they can automatically, I jawed at you and now I'm going to step back, and when you attack me, I'm going to shoot you. Wrong answer, okay?
Doesn't work that way.
No, it does not. So the next condition you have to show that you had right to self-defense with lethal force in Ohio, fear of serious bodily harm or death. And that really boils down to you think you're going to die. Or I've heard this defined, serious bodily harm is anything that might put you in a hospital, anything that might cause long-term mental or physical impairments, things like that. So as I think I mentioned last week, I had an attorney tell me a good ass whooping does not justify deadly force. Excuse my language, but sometimes that was a good way for me to remember stuff. And then the third condition you have to meet in Ohio is duty to retreat. This one, I think, throws people off a little bit because they just assume, and some states have stand your ground, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But some people just assume that they can go to fight no matter what.
Right.
Do you run into that attitude when you're teaching and stuff, or it may not be as prevalent in some women?
Yeah, no, not as prevalent.
Yeah.
There's sometimes you run across one person, but
Yeah. I think when people join an organization like yours, they
Yeah.
tend not to be that mindset.
Right.
I have taught classes, and I'm trying to think how did this young lady put this? If my baby daddy's mama comes at me and starts talking smack, I'm going to have, I was like, what? I said, no, that is not a lethal force incident. That is a duty to retreat. If she's up in your face, that's when you need to walk away.
Right.
And I get a lot of the younger guys who are, 21, 22, 23, and they're like, well, he said. I was like, I don't care what he said. You need to walk away at that point. There is no he said, she said.
Right.
Unless that person said, I'm going to kill you, and they reach in their waistband, at that point, let it go. At that point, okay, maybe you defend yourself, but even at that point, you're still, were they just reaching in their waistband because their underwear was bunched up? I don't know. So you can't really necessarily, you got to walk away. So that duty retreat thing is a must to walk away. And again, like I said, I think this one causes the most problems. Marian, anytime you think that walking away is not the answer, or when we are legally not bound to walk away?
I'm sure there's circumstances. And it's like a fine line.
Yeah, and that's a hard one. I think that is
Yeah.
probably one of the hardest ones that you can really think through, because you're making that decision
Right.
now. I mean,
Yes.
it's not a. You see, police departments go through this all the time. They get judged. Could they have acted differently? They shouldn't have done that. And you don't
Right.
know. You talk about somebody getting an airsoft gun pointed at them,
Right.
versus you can't tell. And if people have not realized how realistic those airsoft guns look now.
Yeah.
Do you guys work with those at all?
No,
Or even blue guns and stuff? And
Sometimes it's just a blue gun.
yeah,
but it
so
doesn't-
even some of the practice, I've seen
Yeah.
people who've taken the blue guns and painted them black.
Yeah.
And if you guys aren't familiar with blue guns, they are legitimate, exact replicas of maybe a gun you're carrying. And it's a good way for you to practice draw stroke and stuff. But I've seen people paint the blue guns black. Holy shnikes.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. And I own some, unfortunately. I have some training guns that are black,
Right.
look like legit guns. And if somebody points that at you in a low light situation,
Yep.
yikes, there's probably not a lot of duty to retreat on your side at that point.
Right.
That might be a situation where you do stand up and say, oh, I need
Yeah.
to defend myself. And it's like now,
Yep.
right?
It's now.
Quick second. You can't make a decision. And, at that point, you've got fight, flight, and freeze type stuff.
Right.
I'm going to probably pick fight at that point. That's just me.
Yeah.
Now I have frozen in fights. Had my backside handed to me. But that's a situation where you're probably not going to have a duty to retreat. But any other situation where you're not dealing with a weapon,
Yeah.
you've got to get yourself out of that situation. So one of the things I did want to discuss tonight is a way in Ohio, or a reason in Ohio, that you might not have to retreat under Castle Doctrine. So, Marian, are you guys talking about this much in classes, or in any of you guys get to cover this?
No, we haven't yet, but we probably will.
Are you familiar, kind of walk through it and stuff, or talk through it at all? Like when you took your classes, did they cover it much in your class?
Not much, no.
Okay. So Castle Doctrine, the way I understand it is, if you are in your home or in your car legally, or in like an immediate family member's car, that is a situation where you do not have to retreat. Okay, under Castle, 'cause it goes back. It literally goes back to common law in England.
Yeah.
Is your home is your castle, right? No reason to get up and get away. Was Fred Flintstone, all his stuff. So yeah, in that situation, if you're in your home and somebody kicks in the door, you don't necessarily have to retreat. Or if you're in your car, you don't necessarily have to retreat by law. Now, I'm going to get into some instances where that might not be the best option to still go to lethal force, but most of the time, you don't have a duty to retreat in that situation. Actually, you never have a duty to retreat, but there are some circumstances where you might still retreat. So I'm going to take this I'm going to do a little reading, and this is going to come right from the Ohio Revised Code, the Attorney General's concealed carry booklet. So it's a little bit long. So if you want to stop me at any point, discuss any of the points, feel free. So right from the booklet, the Castle Doctrine generally encompasses the idea that a person does not have a duty to retreat from the residence he lawfully occupies before using force in self-defense or defense of another. We'll get into that. Defense of another is a whole nother ball game. That goes a whole nother world. Additionally, there's no duty to retreat if a person is lawfully in the vehicle or lawfully an occupant in a vehicle owned by an immediate family member or person. So that lays down some ground rules there.
Yeah.
start seeing situations where you might stand up and take on somebody. Yeah, so
Well, a carjacking.
yeah, right.
There's a lot of that going on now.
So at first in Ohio, you're right on. Self-defense. Well, excuse me, concealed carry came into Ohio in 2004ish. Castle Doctrine did not pass until 2008.
Right.
Carjackings. So you were supposed to jump out of your car and run away.
Yeah, really.
With my luck, they'd try to carjack me as I going 60, and I got to bail out. So there's, and Marian hit it right on the head.
Or they could, they try to jump in on the other side and,
Yeah, carjacking, or you're right. Somebody jumps in and, hey, we're going to the ATM with your ATM card.
Right.
Oh, do people use ATM cards anymore? Your bank card or whatever they call them these days. So that's a situation where, you're game on. I don't want to call it game on. I'm getting glib again. But, you don't have to retreat in your car at that situation. You don't have to try to jump out. You could defend yourself. Now, sometimes it may make sense to jump out.
True.
Nothing says you have to stay in that car and get into a fight, right? That's one place where, that lays down the basics for Castle Doctrine. So, however, being a lawful occupant of a residence or vehicle is not a license to use deadly force against an attacker. Oh, so there's situations where we might not want to escape, even though.
Yeah.
The person who is attacked without fault of his own may use deadly force only if he reasonably and honestly believed that the deadly force was necessary to prevent serious bodily harm or death. So this gets right into, even though you have Castle Doctrine to protect you if you're in your home or your car, if you still can't show that you were able to use lethal force, you could probably still end up in a little bit of trouble. But I don't know that, from what I've seen and from some of the case law and stuff, if they're in your home, you have the presumption that they're there with ill intent. And there's been a lot of cases where people have been found not guilty, even though maybe there was an accident or somebody was in the house accidentally, things like that. So if the person does not have the belief, he should not use deadly force. Again, if it does not put your life or the life of others in danger, you should withdraw from the confrontation if it is safe to do so. The law presumes you have acted in self-defense or defense of another when using deadly force if the victim had unlawfully and without privilege entered or was in the process of entering the residence or vehicle you occupy. So again, back to that carjacking situation, lethal force becomes pretty defensible in that situation, so that's good. The presumption does not apply if the defendant was lawfully in that residence or vehicle. The presumption does not apply if the victim had the right to be in or was a lawful resident of the residence or the vehicle. So this gets into, okay, I'm going to pull out Castle Doctrine. I got in a fight with my wife, and we were in the car, so I have the right to Castle Doctrine, right? She's in the car legally, and I'm Holly, if you're listening, my beautiful wife. Just FYI, you cannot just shoot me because you're angry at me in the car again. Not again, sorry. That came out wrong. So I want everyone to hear that. I have a recording, FYI. So Ohio law was changed in 2019 in self-defense cases. If there's evidence that tends to support that a person accused of a crime use it for force and self-defense, the burden shifts to the prosecution to provide beyond reasonable doubt. So that just changed last year. In Ohio, you were, how do I say this? You're usually innocent until you're proven guilty. Changed last year, finally. I laughed. I was reading something on this, and my rep was John Eklund? Dave Eklund, whatever Eklund's first name is. So they brought this up when they were arguing this about Castle Doctrine and shifting the burden of proof. 49 other states had that burden of proof, where it was on the prosecutor. Ohio was the only one, and Eklund goes so far as to say, as they were getting ready to change it and vote on it, he goes, listen, if 49 other states jumped off of a bridge, do we need to follow them? What? Are you freaking kidding me? So he was against it. He broke party lines, and I try not to get too political, but what in the heck is wrong with people? How does that even become a thing? So again, it shows with Castle Doctrine, there might be a way for you to walk out of that and not cause yourself grief by walking away. So I guess a scenario I think through is, even though we have Castle Doctrine in Ohio, somebody breaks in your house, they steal your TV.
Right.
Is that a reason to shoot somebody?
No.
I'm not. As much as I love my TV and I love my Netflix, if somebody's walking out the door with your TV,
You have to let them go.
yeah, there's no reason. And honestly, you probably could.
And actually, your pet too, your dog.
Oh, so go deeper on that. So if they're stealing your dog,
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Or harm your dog, you can't do anything about it.
oh,
But you know you're gonna.
yeah. So why in Ohio, Marian, is the dog situation? Why is that?
Because they don't consider the dog or a family member or I forget the term that they use, but
So a dog is basically property in Ohio.
yeah.
So if somebody snatches your dog, I don't care how much that dog is, because I know people pay a lot for dogs, or
Yeah.
how much because I know a lot of people will treat their dogs like they're kids.
Right.
So you can't defend that dog.
No.
Oh boy,
Nope.
I bet that would cause a lot
Yeah.
of people a lot of grief. Because I would probably defend the dog, quite frankly. That's just me. But what do I know? What do I know? It is what it is. So yeah, if somebody's stealing your big screen TV, now you could confront them in your house. And, with that situation, if they're fleeing, yeah, let them go. There's no
Yeah.
reason for you to confront over a TV. The other situation, I think we talked a little about this last week, is if you pull up to your house and there's somebody already in the house, there's really no reason for you to go in.
Right.
Do you think you'd be covered under Castle Doctrine at that point?
If you went in?
Yeah. I'm going to think you had to be in there first.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, I think so.
Again, I think if you look at the other three conditions, you have to prove for
Right.
self-defense, not starting the fight.
Yeah.
If I go into my house, I'm probably going to be pissed. You're in my house.
Yeah.
So I might, knowing my general attitude, I might start a fight. Mm-hmm. So if I start getting into a situation there, if I escalated that fight, I feel that you might lose your right to Castle Doctrine.
Yeah, probably.
And then you're probably going to lose your right to the other three things you got to prove. So you started the fight. There might not have been a weapon involved.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I walk in and I say, so you can use reasonable force in Ohio to protect property. So if I walk in my house and somebody's in there and they raise a TV above their head and go to smash me with my 50-inch TV, different story.
Correct.
Because now you're into the situation where it's
threat to your life.
yeah. I mean, that's serious bodily harm or death.
Right.
So I know TVs are getting lighter all the time, but that's serious bodily harm or death if somebody makes a threat like that. So I think in that situation, if somebody asked me this, they said, John, if I pull up and I see them in the house, do I go in? I said, in my opinion, no. You stay outside and call 911. She goes, but I carry a rifle in my car. I was like, no. I said, I love the idea that you're going to snipe somebody through your front window, but no, you need to probably go call the police. And not only that, if you're in public and same thing, because of Castle Doctrine, yeah, you think you have a little more rights in your home, but that's the same thing. You probably have a duty to retreat instead of going into the house. You're back to that third condition because you're not already in the house. Flip side, if you're in the house and they come in, different story.
Right.
Now, I've read several cases and I've heard several things where Castle Doctrine was used in the defense, but there are some situations I can think of that just real scary, where somebody comes in your house and you might point a gun at somebody who's in your house, you don't know why. Mm-hmm. I know of one person who had an Alzheimer's patient walk in their house. Oh, wow. Castle Doctrine?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, under that law, you could probably argue Castle Doctrine because you didn't know what the threat was. You were in your home.
Yeah.
You perceived that as a threat and you acted.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Right.
You want that on your mind the rest of your life?
No.
You killed an Alzheimer's patient who wandered into your house accidentally. Now, should you keep your door locked? Sure. And I know there's all these arguments of, we forget things. It happens. I've read stories of people pulling up to a house and they thought they were attending a party, which they were. They came to a party in that neighborhood, walked into the wrong house. Oh, you want to call Castle Doctrine on that? Oh, I came out of my back bedroom. There were two guys in my house, and I smoked both of them. Oh, did you? And why were they there? Were they meant to do you harm? No. Why were they there? Oh, they got the wrong house. Oh.
Yeah.
Yikes. That's terrifying to me. Any other? Have you ever walked into something like that? You ever gone to the wrong house or
No,
no?
can't
Oh,
say
good.
I have.
You're a better person than I am. I may have poked my head in to some wrong places or knocked on the wrong doors in my day. And that's another one with Castle Doctrine where, I just read a case recently, and this was kind of, was this in Dayton, I believe? A guy goes out, 2 kids in his garage, sitting in his car. It's a detached garage. He goes in and kills both of them. Oh, he called 911.
Yeah.
Let me take it back. I think he called 911 after the shooting. So in that situation, detached garage, think it falls under Castle?
I want to say yeah because it's your property.
I think some people go that way, and I've seen places where, and now they didn't arrest this guy.
Right.
But I've read other cases where detached garages are not considered under Castle Doctrine because they're almost like a shed or something.
Mm.
So then it gets back into under Castle Doctrine. Are people using that detached garage? Some people have they'll rent a place above their garage.
Right.
So now you're getting into a real thin line. I think a lot of what I've seen is says the detached type places are probably less likely to be covered by Castle Doctrine versus once somebody enters your garage, it's attached to the house. Mm-hmm. And I've had arguments both ways with that, saying, hey, listen, they're just in your garage. They haven't come through your door yet. In my world, probably shouldn't say this live, but I'm thinking if somebody's in my garage is attached to my house, that's part of my dwelling. Like my house right now, if you walked into my garage, my bedroom is directly above that garage, the way my house plan is set up. So technically, all you would have to do is shoot through the ceiling of that thing, and you're shooting at me at that point.
Yeah.
So I think in my world, I would probably at least, you're getting a gun pointed at you in the garage. When I actually shoot you, I don't know. I had a friend tell me he was going to, how is he doing this? His home defense plan was, he loaded, his 12 gauge. He had 12 gauge. That was his main home defense. And he was going to load a beanbag round as the first round. I said, that's kind of cool, except if this is a lethal force situation, you beanbag somebody and they don't respond, like fall down and scream in pain, then what? Now you've lost the beanbag thump, right. And you're now under fire. Bang, 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 bang.
Mm-hmm.
I mean you're going to be covered under Castle Doctrine, but how much time did you waste with a beanbag round? That's a whole different ballgame. So, there was a horrible story. What was I watching? Dateline, Nightline, some line, one of those shows. 2 14-year-old kids out drinking. I know every 14-year-old should be out drinking. The one boy brings the other boy home, and he goes around to the back because he doesn't want to get the kid in trouble. They push the back window up and push the kid through the window. Mm-hmm. And 14-year-old drunk, not thinking straight, I'm sure. The kid goes to go up to his bedroom, and turns out it's not his house. It's a neighbor's house. It's a new neighbor. They don't know each other. This guy is brand new on the street. The neighbor claimed that the kid moved him after he gave him commands not to move, like he came at him. Uh-huh. What the police and the parents think were that the kid thought he was still in his house. He thought it was maybe dad yelling at him from across the room, and he tried to go to his bedroom. Same floor plan. The homeowner sees it as a threat, as an attack, and he kills the kid.
Oh, geez.
Holy cow. Wow. So I don't know many people would act much differently in that situation. Yeah. But now you're dealing with, did I have to use lethal force? Did I just kill a 14-year-old? I've got that on my mind the rest of my life. Right. Holy cow. Yeah. So Castle Doctrine, again, doesn't give you 100% right to kill somebody just because they're in your home. Is it easier to defend? Yes. But there are certain things that, you're not going to necessarily, you're going to be held to a different standard in your home, be able to prove self-defense easier. But I don't want people leaving my classes just going, oh, you're in my house, I'm going to kill you. Again, 3 or 4 examples of what? Yikes. So, yeah, that's tough. I hope I never have to deal with that. There's a little bit of difference here in Ohio is stand your ground versus Castle Doctrine. And I think this is where we get some confusion. Mm-hmm. You familiar with Castle Doctrine, Marian? How that works versus Castle versus stand your ground?
Not totally as much.
Yeah, I think this is where it gets a little murky. Yeah. Ohio has tried to pass stand your ground on a couple different occasions.
Right.
House brought it forward 2018 when they had this last good changes in 2019. They brought it forward. I believe the Senate and maybe the governor vetoed it. So a lot of those bills changed, like the presumption of innocence and stuff. That all changed for the good, but they did away with stand your ground.
Yeah.
So my understanding with stand your ground versus Castle Doctrine is Castle Doctrine says, again, you have the right to defend yourself, no duty to retreat in your home and in your car. Stand your ground takes away duty to retreat pretty much everywhere. Mm-hmm. So I think that we'll talk about pros and cons. So one of the things I was reading, it basically says stand your ground laws are essentially say you do not have a duty to retreat. Usually, under most circumstances, individuals can use force to defend themselves without first attempting to retreat from the danger. The purpose behind the law is to remove any confusion about when individuals can defend themselves and to eliminate prosecution of people who legitimately use self-defense, even though they had attempted to retreat from the threat. Okay, I can see where if I were in a situation where I felt threatened, there's no ambiguity there. I felt threatened, and I defended myself. My question in Ohio is if they brought stand your ground, what's that level?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think? Where would you draw that line of I feel so threatened that I am not going to run away? I mean, give me a circumstance where you might run into that.
Ah, wow.
I know, put you on the spot, right?
Yeah.
If I walked up to you and just shoved you really hard, so understand your ground.
Right, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to draw my gun and shoot you.
Now some people might take that as especially depending how stand your ground is written.
I mean,
in
it depends
states.
on how hard you push me. But
there we go. So you're looking at a level. You're looking at a disparity of force situation in
Yeah,
that situation.
yeah.
So if I pushed you versus a bodybuilder who looks angry, because if I push you, I'd probably laugh and be like, look where he fell down.
Yeah, you would.
That's hurtful. That's hurtful. So there's probably some disparity of force situations there with stand your ground. I think one of probably the most infamous cases I can think of that were stand your ground is probably Trayvon Martin. And from what I remember, the attorney didn't argue stand your ground, but the jury was given the statutes to stand your ground. Mm. So that's kind of a situation where, I don't know that we still ever heard all the facts or, any court case, you don't get all the facts. But there's a situation, stand your ground, caused somebody to die who probably could have walked away from that situation. George could have probably just made a phone call again and be like, dude, there's somebody in our neighborhood walking around. But instead, he walks up and confronts the kid. Right. And then the kid ends up on top of him, beating his head into the ground, and he shoots him. Yeah. Did you have to approach the kid? Right. Again, this gets into, if you start getting into stand your ground, and listen, I am not against stand your ground in Ohio. I worry that people would use stand your ground in some...
Abuse it.
Yeah. Abuse it or just not make good decisions. Right. And again, under stress, making a good decision is not easy. That's right. But you're right. Some 20-year-old kid, 21 if you're still carrying, might use that, as you said, abuse it. Oh, look at me. I'm 21. Guys are the worst with this. We know everything. And, that might be a tough situation where, now one place I could see stand your ground being a good thing by taking away the duty to retreat, a mom out with 3 of her kids. And they're threatened. Right. How much retreat do you have at that situation? You're going to run and leave your kids behind? No. I mean, I'm with you. I'd probably not do duty retreat with my dogs. Right? I mean, that's just a situation where, I might think about that and not retreat. I think of people who are maybe handicapped. Right. What level are they held to at Castle Doctrine versus a stand your ground type situation? I see where it becomes good. But I feel a lot of times with stand your ground, if you can prove the first 2 conditions, the not starting the fight, and your life was in serious bodily harm or death. Yeah. I don't know where stand your ground, and I'm probably going to get beat up over this a little bit, but I just want people to think through stand your ground versus Castle Doctrine. I don't have a problem with stand your ground coming. I just hope that people, use that in the way that it makes a whole lot of sense. But that's just me. So yeah, the American Bar Association did a study. I think it was 2015-ish. I think I read. There was a whole study around this. They spent like a year and a half, and they said that homicides went up by like a third. Which,
wow.
yeah, and I don't know. I have to go back and look at the study. How were they defining homicide? Was a self-defense thing looked at a homicide? I wouldn't think so. But are they defining homicide as somebody approached somebody, they tried to argue Castle Doctrine, and they killed somebody outright? Oh, that's a different ballgame.
Yeah.
And then it sounded like there was like a serious racial disparity in the statistics where more African Americans and people of color were actually dying because Castle Doctrine was introduced, which then goes to, well, what's the stat of, how much crime is already in that community, and what was, I need to look at it a little bit deeper. But if those are the type of things that are coming out of Stand Your Ground, yikes. And again, guys, don't take this as, John said we should do Stand Your Ground. No, John is saying, think through this stuff and kind of think about it. Wow, are we really at the end of time already? That is nuts. So we'll pick this up a little bit more next week. We really just ripped through almost 40 minutes, didn't we? Wow.
Yeah, we did.
You are quite the co-host. Thank you for knocking that out of the way. So again, guys, thanks for joining in. We'll get into some more Castle Doctrine or Stand Your Ground next week, and hope you can join us again at 8 o'clock. Again, this is John and Marian signing off for Protect You Radio, part of Self-Defense Mondays on Karma Radio.